Hi there, Carrie. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. And in response to your question, I do think it's a very sad day for Canada. If for those of us who've been following the foreign interference inquiry and scandal, as well as the FBI indictment that proved that Russia was paying Canadian influencers to influence our Canadian discourse, there's no question that played a huge role in where we are now.
Oh, hi, Bill.
Hello.
Hi.
I think this is the exact reason why we should adopt a two-term maximum for change. You know, it's way too long. It doesn't matter what party is in power. It should be 2 terms, and that's it.
Hi, Tim. What's your reaction to Trudeau's resignation, announcing he's resigning?
Well, it's not surprising. He just did a Stephen Harper. So the Conservatives can't, I think, go at the Liberals because he did exactly what Stephen Harper did when he ran to Michael Jean to make sure he wasn't voted out by non-confidence motion by Dion, Duceppe, and Layton. The one thing I found in Pierre Poilievre's reaction, which is really interesting, he said that all the other Liberals who are possibly going to run are trying to protect our pensions, which I find really interesting because doesn't Pierre Poilievre have at least over 20 years of pensions? So is he going to give his up in order to give an example of that, I would think. The other thing is, like if Pierre Poilievre, what if events, dear boy, events, as the British Prime Minister is famously quoted? Because what is not to say that if there's an election, regardless of who the new Liberal leader is, what if Pierre Poilievre gets in but he gets a minority? Who's he going to deal with if that's the case?
I was a conservative, and I was convinced by my children in 2015 to vote Liberal, which I did, because the Harper government was long in the tooth. They became complacent, and, Harper was probably not the best person to be in the party. He should have stepped aside and let somebody new and young reinvigorate the party. But if we look back at those times, in BC we had the fast ferries, problem, fiasco, and the government spending issues. I think there was something about a $5,000 or $7,000 hammer being purchased.
Right, the provincial politics.
Yes, yes. But federally, we were looking at the Conservatives and saying, they're just not doing what needs. It's time for a change. And I think that's indicative of today. There is time for a change, and what we've been doing hasn't worked, so we need to change it up. I find that a lot of people that you speak with and then callers that come in are very, negative towards the Conservatives when we've always only been a two-party country in Canada. So it's time to give them a chance and try and right this train that we're on.
And Gordon, what do you make of, a lot of the criticism of the Conservatives would be criticism of Pierre Poilievre for, relying on slogans essentially, and saying things that are would be perceived as divisive, for example. So what are your thoughts on him personally as a leader?
I've had a chance to meet with him and speak with him, and I would like us to remember that this divisive and negative type of campaigning first came about in 2015 when the Liberals were, the Stop Harper, stop signs, the sloganing was actually it's a Liberal technique that was first brought on. So he is only playing the game that has been dealt to him. And the problem is he plays it better. I mean, he's articulate, he's educated, he's fast on his feet. He has a lot of qualities where he sticks to what he says. He's not duplicitous and he's not talking out of both sides of his mouth,
Really good to hear from you, Gordon. Thanks so much for the call.
Thank you for taking our calls.
Take care. That's Gordon in Vancouver. Let's take one more call before I go back to Katie DeRosa. And William is actually calling us from south of the border at Port Townsend. Hi, William.
Hi, good afternoon.
Yes, I'm curious to hear what you have to say watching from south of the border.
Well, I lived in Canada for years, and I follow Canadian news closely. My son is a Canadian, lives in Vancouver, and I agree with him. He says the reason that did Trudeau in was the post COVID inflation anti-incumbency wave that impacted pretty much all the world, impacted Canada too. At least a year ago, it was clear he should step aside and let someone else carry the baton. I would like to see Chrystia Freeland get in office because he would be no friend of Donald Trump's, and I like that a lot.